Hey, what's up? Now, today we are going to be talking about the second chapter of the LUA series. This, my friends, is the LUA Synchronicity. This thing is a step up from the Serendipity, or you could say it's a totally different rendition. It costs 790 US dollars, and how does this thing fare with everything else on the market in this price point? Let's talk about it. Now, in the last video, I talked about how the Serendipity encapsulates darkness. It represents the LUA's darkness side. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, you will have something like this. This is going to be in the context where they are tuned for a stage performer, as being told by Rossi and Wing. And unlike the Serendipity, which is created more for the sake of enjoyment, this thing overall was created with a more utilitarian type of use case. But before we get into that, as always, y'all know my shtick. Now, the unboxing experience is pretty much going to be the same as the Serendipity. If you guys haven't checked it out, just go to the video popping up right here. But the gist is that this whole thing is being done by a local artist in Taiwan that is currently their creative consultant called Cypress. This is all being hand painted, and this I think I forgot to mention this, but the context is that it is heavily inspired by Van Gogh, hence the more, I would say, stronger and more dominant type of brushstrokes that you can see throughout this whole packaging. Opening this up, other than letting you know about chapter 2 of the LUA series, other than opening this up, seeing the obvious IMs, you will be having the same presentation where once you open it up, there will be no case, but there will be another cloth that has the same design as the packaging, as well as, let's not forget the fact that it has another scent. Yes, this thing comes in number 4 of the hockey scent. For people who haven't watched the Serendipity video, they have basically also collaborated with a fragrance brand in Taiwan, Hockey. And just to show you, this is going to be the perfume that comes in the packaging. And again, I'm not an aficionado in scent, so if I like it, I just like it. This thing, it's not really my thing, but expect some sense of tea, I would say. This overall smells like tea leaves. But yeah, again, we're not gonna be reviewing scents, we're gonna be reviewing IEM. So without further ado, quick talk about the build. Now, the build overall is gonna be more or less the same as the Serendipity in terms of, first of all, this thing is made of fully resin, and second of all, it is being littered with, so much glitter that is iridescent, and it could actually change hues when you are looking at it in different angles. And there's honestly not really much that I want to say other than this is definitely one of those pieces once in a blue moon that actually tries to make a statement. It looks simple, but it looks extremely vibrant. It looks extremely aggressive. And without wasting any more time, which, honestly, it's quite fast in this context, let's actually talk about the sound. And again, with a little bit of a lore drop, LUA means Lumen Umbra Eterna, which basically stands for Eternal Light and Darkness in Latin. So, if the Serendipity is chapter 1, it represents darkness. This is going to be on the opposite side of the spectrum. This is the one that represents light. First impressions for me, this is basically like a close to neutral balance-ish pair with a very good level of energeticness on the mid and up. The Serendipity overall has a very nice profile on the base region. Expect this to not really have that in the context of, how dynamic it is. Not to say that this thing is not dynamic, but again, with the context of me saying that this is more of a stage performer piece, overall, expect this pair to have less of a dynamicness, but more for, analyticalness, technicalities, sterileness, something along the lines of that. I will say that they have executed this thing quite well. Sub bass overall might sound more elevated in this particular pair, mainly because of the fact that it is more lean on the lower and the mid bass. And unlike the Serendipity, where overall due to the darkness there's not going to be that much twang in the low end, this thing has more of a naturalness to it. It makes you notice very subtle things like when the fingernail grazes over the strings on the guitar, stuff like those very minute harmonics that you usually associate with naturalness. And overall, I would say for the bass region, everything has a more tactile, responsive, and basically just fast. Everything sounds fast, everything sounds very good. There's not going to be any levels of sloppiness or laid backness. But yeah, definitely compare this to the Serendipity, a very stark contrast where one has a lot of bass, this thing has just all right. It's not trying to overperform there. What it's gonna overperform is in the vocal region and the mid-range. And this is gonna be a personal bias, so let me just lay this out right here. Vocals, first of all, again, due to the fact that this is a stage performer piece, I like the tonality of it, I like the positioning of it. But when I say this, please remember that I like something that has a slight thinness to it and something that is positioned extremely forward. This thing has all of that, which I personally enjoy. Tonality on this pair is extremely neutral. There's not going to be any levels of coloring on it. And definitely, like what I explained, the easiest way for me to summarize everything is a studio monitor type of signature, where even though the vocals are thin, it still carries a level of resolution, it carries a level of aggressiveness, organicness, robustness to all of the vocals that I personally quite like. For some people, it might sound like it's a little bit dead inside, it sounds like it's a little bit emotionless, but that's the whole gist of a studio monitor type of sound signature. Simply saying, I'll just put it this way, because we have went to NIAV, a lot of people that like this pair are people with musical backgrounds. For people who just want to enjoy music, they lean a lot towards either the Serendipity or the Celestion, which has none of these types of characteristics in the vocal side. But there is one very particular thing that a lot of people agree on. The instruments overall, even though it sounds more sterile, it sounds more transparent, it still sounds very amazing in that context. Micro details are going to be heard here and there, but it's not going to be like too much. It's less obstructive, it's less obtrusive, where they just give enough but not too much. This is kind of like if I say the NA20, the NM20, any of those, it's kind of like those levels of mids where you are being given enough background details. They are all definitely being given to you at a very nice form, but not overperforming. It's just giving you enough so that you can monitor everything as it is. And again, neutral balance pair, stage performer piece, definitely that's the reason why for the dynamics, the mids are going to be more or less in that end. It's not going to be light, it's not going to be dark, it's just going to be natural, it's just going to be true, it's just going to sound real. Without the flare, without the decay, the reverb, everything is as so. Which overall this translates to the upper mids and treble. Overall, the upper mids and treble are going to have a very specific type of characteristic, which is very hard for me to explain. It sounds spacious, it sounds airy, not really too airy, but just enough. Like it's accurate enough to sound like it's the real world type of airy, but overall it is a little bit dry. Percussions overall are quite natural in terms of the timbre, but the roll-offs are gonna be slightly dryish, if it makes any sense. It hits, and once the decay starts, you will feel like it starts to dry up, it starts to fizzle up. But despite I say that, when there is gonna be like some form of biting, and when I say bite, it's kind of like, when the aggressiveness kind of hits, it captures every single velocity that tries to come out from the track, which is a good thing. Instruments on the top end will definitely again sound very good, but it does not overwhelm you in that context because, like I said, neutral tuning. But due to the fact that there is going to be less bass, some people might associate this with a more shrill type of IEM tuning, which I personally would disagree. I feel like this thing has enough level of energeticness without sounding too harsh, without sounding too shouty. And there's one more specific thing that I noticed is that macro details on the upper mids and up are not going to be too emphasized in terms of how, I would say, intimate it feels. It's just going to be there. And at the same time, due to this, the good thing about this is that micro details in this region are going to flutter everywhere. Like the detail retrievals, every single Foley, every little harmonics are going to shine in this particular area. So in a sense, you could say that this thing is definitely having a very nice ambiance in the upper mids and treble region. Going on to the technicalities, I can't comment much on dynamics because, it is a stage performer piece. Definitely, if you're comparing it to almost everything else, you're going to say it's not going to perform that good. But in the context of this use case, it is very justifiable to say that everything sounds very technical. But if you're going to say that this thing sounds musical type of dynamic, to each their own. If you appreciate this type of tuning, then you will definitely like it. And for soundstage, comparing this to the Serendipity, this has a more generic type of soundstage where unlike First Light and Serendipity, it's a more radio light. This thing is standard, but you know, for the price for 790 US dollars, it is quite wide. It has enough width. Depth is decent. Height is also decent. Imaging and staging, due to the fact that, again, this is that type of use case pair, it's gonna sound extremely accurate. It's gonna sound good on extremely heavy tracks, on extremely busy tracks. You can feel like everything is being separated extremely well without any loss of resolution overall. You can still pinpoint every single thing without any faults. And last but not least, talking about detail retrieval, like I said, not gonna be that much specific, not gonna be that much emphasized on macros, but micros will definitely shine due to the fact that everything, all the overtones are going to be like, you know, part of the ambience of every single track. And with all that being said, what are my final thoughts on the LUA Synchronicity? For people who have watched the last video, I think everybody probably knows, and it's quite obvious that I personally like this pair the most, mainly because of its tuning that allows me to use this when I'm mixing songs on Ableton. So overall, I would say, you know, for people who are into music, for people who are creators of music, you will definitely enjoy this pair when you are using it for a work case. And even if you are not using it for a work case, you know, sometimes we just want to analyze music. We just want to understand, how does someone build that track like that? How does the mix go like that? Can I listen to some playbacks of my own music that is going to have very good resolution but zero levels of coloration? This pair will do. This pair will definitely do. And with all that being said, thank you for watching this video. For people internationally, if you guys are interested in this pair, hit the links in the description below. And for people in Malaysia, you could hit me up or hit Not Brand Acoustics up. We are friends with Zephon, definitely. So if you guys want a pair, we could arrange a pair for you guys shipped to you. And with all that being said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good day.